Welcome to Community Chats, bringing you stories and insights from the heart of Community Living Toronto, a non-profit organization that proudly supports people with intellectual disabilities and their families. We will focus on stories of belonging and inclusion and topics of interest from communities across Ontario and the world. From uplifting moments to breaking barriers, from innovative policies to ideas from leading thinkers, we continue to advocate for inclusive communities and support the rights and choices of people with an intellectual disability.
Hi, everyone. This is Brad Saunders, CEO at Community Living Toronto, and welcome to our Community Chats podcast. Glad you've chosen to spend a bit of time with us today. For those of us who have siblings, we understand the unique relationship and bond that develops. At times, that relationship can be competitive, can be caring, can be loving. Often, that is the person who knows you the best, and certainly the only other person who's experienced a childhood similar to yours. As we have discussed on Community Chats, for people whose siblings have an intellectual disability, those relationships are unique and often take many twists and turns. And in some cases, there are higher expectations of a sibling in terms of caring for their brother or sister that are not often put on other siblings. Today, I talk with Helen Ries, the co-founder of Siblings Canada, about her personal experience, the research she has done, and the work that is her passion. We had a great conversation that I hope you will enjoy. Now I bring you Helen Ries. Hello, Helen. Nice to connect with you over at this webinar today. Thanks for making yourself available and taking some time to share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with Siblings Canada. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, it's been a while trying to get together to do this chat. We first talked about it about a year ago, and I'm glad that we finally got a chance to sit down virtually and connect.
Well, good things take time, right?
Yes. Really looking forward to this conversation. I know I've really been impressed with the work that you do and your story. So I'm glad we have an opportunity to share it. Maybe to start, for the people that are listening, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I always start with what's most important, which is I'm the sister to my wonderful brother, Paul. He's a person with Down syndrome. We live together here in our home in Ottawa. I've always just been Paul's sister, so that's why I'm starting off with that, just to get it out of the way. But I'm the co-founder of Siblings Canada, and something that's become very important to me over the last 5 years is I'm also a visual artist and a printmaker.
Okay, talk about that. What kind of visual art do you do, and printmaking? Has this been a lifelong passion, or what drew you to that?
I think it's been an unmet lifelong passion. My grandfather gave me my first set of oil paints when I was probably about 7 or 8. But life is busy. And during the pandemic, I picked up a paintbrush and started painting again. And I'm actually right now doing a diploma in fine arts at the Ottawa School of Art, which has been a really, really wonderful experience because it takes me out of my caregiving role.
Yeah.
And I'm with mostly 20-year-olds who don't actually care what you've done in your life. You mean nothing, and they're amazing talents, and you are, pretty mediocre compared to them. So it's been really humbling in many, many, many ways, and really rewarding. So I paint a lot in acrylic and oil, and I also do a lot of lino cut printmaking.
Okay. That's very neat that you pursued that passion and also turned. I think about what I did through COVID, and I did not come out as an aspiring artist or pursue a passion like that. So glad to see that some people did.
Yeah, I have to say my brother, he's been an artist for many years, like probably about 15 years. And he does these bright, beautiful paintings. And somebody noted that my brother and I actually paint very comparably. We were both into bright colors and daily sort of the themes of our daily lives. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Great. The ability to express yourself through art. The picture behind me is painted by a guy who's connected, who I met through Community Living Toronto, and is involved in our art program and sells a lot of art
Hmm.
across the city. He's done shows. It's a really cool way to express yourself. And
Hmm.
he's prolific in the work that he does. So it's
Hmm.
a very
Amazing.
neat way of expressing yourself.
Yeah. And then I'm quite engaged in art history, which
Hmm.
is also very soothing experience
Okay.
to go through the history of art, and you realize that, people really haven't changed that much since,
That's a
thousands
good
and
way to look
thousands
at
of
it. Yeah.
years, and but we've always been in search of beauty and in search of godliness. And I think
Yeah.
that's so interesting too. And it brings me a lot of peace, and it's very interesting. So,
Nice.
mhm.
Um, tell me about your brother Paul and maybe a little bit about your family
Mhm.
your role as a sibling and a caregiver.
Mhm. So as I noted at the outset, Paul's lives with me and my husband here in Ottawa, and we've been living together for about 10 years.
Hmm.
We started living together after our parents passed away. I think before that, we had a typical sibling relationship. I didn't have too much to do with him, and he didn't have too much to do with me, except for, family events, and
Yeah.
he'd come over and hang out, and we've always had a relatively good relationship. He's an incredibly stubborn person, and I'm an incredibly stubborn person. So, there's been a lot of fireworks over the years, but I think we've found our peace. Living together was challenging at the beginning, and so required a lot of figuring out how to simmer those fireworks
Yeah.
down. My poor
So
husband.
so how did that come to pass that that you
Mm.
began living together?
Yes. Our parents passed away, and our parents
Okay.
passed away relatively young. They were both healthy and happy people, and they both surprised us with early passing. So, there's just not a lot of choices in terms of housing for people with disabilities. And my brother has lived in this community his entire life, and he'd been in this home for, 20 years, I think.
Hmm.
More actually. He moved here in 1994. And so my husband and I had lived not too far away in a small house. So we sold our house and we moved into this house. And it's worked out really well. It was a good decision.
That's a big commitment.
Yes, well, I'm hoping I can talk to you about that more a little bit later, but that's not atypical for
Yeah.
siblings. So we siblings tend to take extraordinary measures when the time comes to step up to um, providing some support for our brothers and sisters, because there's just really not a lot of options, and we often don't understand what's going on out there. What are the systems? What might be available to us? And so we sort of take it upon ourselves to figure out, well, how is this going to work best for us?
So
And that, yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
What I was going to say, and that's what we did. We spent a lot
Yeah.
of time thinking, like, how's this going to work? What's the easiest way for us to enjoy our lives moving forward? And so being together in this house, in this neighborhood, was best for all of
Really
us.
made a lot of sense. So, you talked about your parents passing away. Now, was it unexpected? Did you have a lot of time to
Mhm.
think about so it just came
No.
all of a sudden? You had some
Mhm.
big choices to make, as did Paul,
Yeah,
with your support. So, can you walk us through a little bit about what went
sure.
into that process to sell and move together, and whether Paul was okay with it, and what other options you looked at?
Well, amazingly, both my parents died very suddenly. So, and they just died within a close time period of each other. I think there was only about 3 years
Wow.
between my mom and my dad. And when my mom died, uh, I wish I could say that we spent time doing really thoughtful discussions with my brother around what we were going to do, but that really wasn't available to us. So
Right.
um, we also had to make changes to the house that my mom and dad were living in
Hmm.
because it was a duplex, which was some good forethought on my dad's behalf, my mom and dad's behalf. They did buy a duplex. Their original intention was for Paul to live on one side and whomever
Okay.
would care for him would live on the other side. So I was never really clear who that other person was. My dad never articulated it, but I think I knew damn well it was always going to be me. Um, so we just had to do a few upgrades to the house and we moved in.
Hmm.
And yeah, we didn't maintain the the duplex configuration. We
Right.
actually turned the house back into a single family home. Um, I saw with my mom when it was a duplex, she was just running back and forth all the time.
Okay.
And she was maintaining, and what in essence, what she was doing was maintaining two homes. And I didn't want to do that. And I also, I always think I don't have a lot of forethought, but I did in my mind's eye think, Paul uh, is not going to age the same way as I might.
Right.
And so I did have in my mind's eye that I might like him to be somewhere a bit closer so that I can have a closer eye on him.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes, well, I have to admit it's really quite close. Being in a single family home together. Paul and I hadn't lived together since I was 18. I left home, and Paul would have been 16. So we hadn't lived together in many, many, many years. And then here we are in our 40s, moving back together. So it was really challenging. I'm not going to lie about that.
I bet, I bet. And now you found a way to make this work, and how's it? How did it? What was the evolution of that like? From moving from this idea to renovating the home to living together in the same space and working out just sort of typical sibling stuff that goes on. I can't imagine living with my sibling. Um, and then you've got this sort of care provider role, caregiver role that you're also in,
Mhm.
which is a further factor.
Right. Gosh, I don't know how to answer all those questions. I think I'll start with the amazing organization that supports my brother. They're
Okay.
called Live Work Play. They're here in Ottawa, and it's a smaller organization, and the staff is quite accessible. And
Hmm.
so they were very close to our journey. So Paul has supported independent living, and they were close to our journey, and um, they were able to point me in the direction of things that I might have needed. And so that was really helpful. And I'm thinking very specifically here around counseling for me.
Okay.
And it was like a godsend because, here I am in this new experience with somebody who I have a relationship with as a family member, but not in that caregiving role.
Yeah.
Power dynamics have completely shifted because that's what happens when a parent passes away. Suddenly the one that's holding all the strings becomes the more dominant person. And that, of course, went over like a sack of hammers with my brother. And so I was referred to this amazing counselor who understands intellectual and developmental disability and I think without that mental health support for me personally, we wouldn't have been able to make this work as it's worked. So and plus Live Work Play has sort of supported Paul in helping him to understand things. So those two pieces have certainly helped us to have a more harmonious relationship. I say more harmonious. I don't want to give off any notions that this is a cakewalk because it sure isn't.
Right,
So,
right.
um,
That's interesting to hear you talk about mental health and caring for yourself, and
mhm,
talking openly around going for counseling and support through that.
mhm,
Um, One of the things that is sometimes observed is that caregivers um, often put themselves last and put the person with a disability first, for
mhm,
many good reasons, right? But
mhm,
there's the old example of if when the plane's having trouble,
mhm.
you put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then put it on the person you're taking care of. And I don't think many people take that to heart. So, and you give a lot of credit to sort of going through that process with somebody that understood your situation.
Right.
And how would you recommend, or how would you frame that for people that sometimes think, well, I'm fine, don't need that. I'm going to be okay. What I need to focus on is taking care of the person with a disability, whether they're a sibling or a son or a daughter or whatever it might be.
Hmm. Well, I have so many stories that I want to tell in that question that you just asked. Um, One was I met a woman. Her name was Barb. I'm sure she won't mind me telling you her story. And she has had a sister who was, she'd looked after her for 25 years.
Hmm.
And I met her at the beginning of my caregiving journey. And when she told me she'd been looking after her sister for 25 years, I almost fell off my chair. I was like, you mean this is going to be a long-term journey? Like,
I
no,
was going
no,
to
no.
say, in shock or amazement, or like,
No,
what have I got?
well, both actually,
Yeah,
both
yeah, yeah,
actually.
yeah.
She care. I consider her in a way a mentor.
Nice.
She cared for her sister at home, which is what is my intention. And she was incredibly resourceful and creative, and she shared a lot with me to help me figure out this journey. So I guess what I wanted to say in that story is that this is not a sprint. I think all parents know that, but I think a lot of siblings might not know that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so we need to care for ourselves as if we are going to embark on a marathon. And you are probably not okay because there's a whole lot of emotions and
Yeah.
difficult emotions that come with being a sibling in the first place. And then you layer on complexities around caregiving, and it just becomes a really messy soup. And the other thing, if my and what's that called? Analogies
Hmm.
are
Yeah,
not good
yeah.
enough. I wanted to point folks to the report that the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence just put out called Caring in Canada. And
Hmm.
we were so lucky, like that survey was with 3,000 carers in Canada, and we were able to extract sibling data. And what we found is that siblings are actually caring the longest for their brothers and sisters after parents, which is a very long journey. But they're doing it with fewer financial support. So they don't have access to their tax credits, they're not getting any income support, and they're experiencing the worst mental health outcomes as compared to any other family caregiving group. So here we have a group of people like myself who are caring for very long periods of time without any of the right financial supports and experiencing poor mental health. And I think that's just a really something I want to wave from the top of the the hill, that this is a warning sign because our role in caring for our brothers and sisters is the well-being of people with disabilities. And if we're not caring for siblings, how
Yeah.
can people with disabilities experience good outcomes? And I also wanted to share one of the best pieces of advice I ever had. You talked about parents saying, or people saying, well, I'm okay, I got to take care of this person. But, it's okay for the person with a disability, to be uncomfortable for a short period of time. Like
Hmm.
it's okay for them to be uncomfortable while you take care of yourself. And
Right.
when somebody told me that, I was like, really? It's okay for me to do what I need to do? Of course it is. That's how we're our best selves for the people that we love, right? So that's a really, really big shift or reframe than I think what most of us carry. But it was so important to me to receive that information and to live it.
That's an excellent point. That if you're, and I'm glad you mentioned it. So if you need the time and the space to take care of yourself, you need to make that time and space. And you use the word uncomfortable, but that could be somebody, not getting the attention that they might be used to, or saying, I can't take you to whatever right now. I need some time to go do what I'm doing. Is that
Mhm.
kind of thing that
Exactly
you're
that kind of thing.
prioritizing?
Exactly kind of that thing. When you start to become aware of it,
Right.
um, you can distinguish, when are opportunities for you to do what you need to do and your person will be okay.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not talking about denying them necessities of life. Like that's not what I'm talking
No, no,
about.
no. It's not neglect. You're
It's
talking
not
about
neglect.
making
I'm talking
space for yourself and
exactly.
recognizing you can't always be
Yes.
there for everything all the time.
Yes, my brother is an extremely demanding fellow. He has lots of he's very busy and he has lots of things that he needs and places he needs to go and things he needs to buy and like he's very busy and if I could be in service to my brother 24/7 if he had his way. So just sort of being able to like this is what you're getting from me today.
Yeah.
Um, it has been just such a relief and given me a lot of space
Yeah.
to be able to be my best self if I,
Yeah.
well, not that I'm
So,
there yet, but
yeah,
working
yeah,
on
yeah. No, it sounds like you're well on your way, and you've really made that work in a way. And I love the way that you're being very honest around this isn't perfect, and it works for us now, but it's not without its challenges, and you're finding a way to work through those challenges. The other thing that you've really gotten into in the last little bit is this co-founding of Siblings Canada.
it. Mhm.
You took your experience and learning and what you were seeing and hearing from other siblings and founded Siblings Canada. So maybe talk about. I think it's clear why you started Siblings Canada, but what was the goal? What were you trying to? What does Siblings Canada try and do and achieve, and
Mhm.
how's it going?
Siblings Canada started really innocently. I just couldn't believe that there was nothing out there to help me figure out this journey. Um, and so it started really just as a Facebook group. And then I met a couple of other siblings, and together we built Siblings Canada. We got a couple of grants. We started running programs. And oh, it's been around for about 8 years, I think, 7 or 8
Okay.
years now. And as anybody involved in nonprofit sector knows, the chasing of grants and it's all really, really difficult.
It is. It
I
is.
had no idea. So kudos to all the nonprofits out there. And we had an opportunity to become part of the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence,
Hmm.
which given my responsibilities at home also made a lot of sense. So I was not in a place where I wanted or could run an independent organization.
Right.
So now we've joined the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence team, which was, I think, one of the best moves we could have made. We have access to wonderful people, their talents, their skills, their knowledge, and can join on their power. For example, they have a policy team, so there are some policies that perhaps well that we would like to work on, and doing it on our own or part of a bigger group is just such a different experience. So we're very grateful to be part of the Canadian Centre, and I think we're chugging along and maintaining our programs and trying new things and being connected to all sorts of people that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. Um,
Yeah.
maybe that would include you, Brad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's how we met, was at a CCCE
Exactly.
event, and their emphasis on caregiving, which would be sort of family or siblings as yourself, or sort of natural connections to a person, versus care providing, which might be a paid staff, a PSW, or in our
Hmm.
sector, developmental services worker, or somebody else in a paid field, and the importance of having an infrastructure that supports people. As well as an infrastructure that supports people that are not paid and need whether that's friendly policies for taking leave and understanding, building in some protections for people as they support, could be aging parents, people with chronic illness, people with disabilities, whatever it might be. It's a really strong emphasis they're putting there. And uh, it it's been interesting to see Canada not be one of I think one of their goals is to make Canada the most caregiving friendly
Yes.
countries in the world. And I've always been struck by visiting other countries and how much resource they put, or even emphasis or understanding, in the drain that being a caregiver can be. And I don't mean drain in a negative way, but it's taxing.
Mhm.
And to have some recognition on that and in the Canadian context is fantastic.
hmm Yes, I think a couple of things I wanted to say about what you've just said is
Yeah.
when Siblings Canada joined CCCE, we did have quite a lot of concern about the word caregiving because a
Okay.
lot of siblings don't actually identify as caregivers. And it's
Right.
taken me a really long time to be able to myself identify with that word. We just are. We've grown up with our brothers and sisters and we've provided care over a lifetime. So it's
Right.
really hard to suddenly adopt a label that doesn't feel like it belongs to us. So it was that was certainly a challenge for us at Siblings Canada. And but we're managing. It's just a label after all. And there's so much, as you say, going on at CCC, including most recently the release of the National Caregiving Strategy.
Yeah.
So that siblings are included in that strategy. We had a chance to contribute to it and are recognized inside that strategy.
Yeah.
So,
Now, you had talked about some research that Siblings
mhm.
Canada had conducted, and what are some of the, maybe talk about the study and what are some of the learnings, the key learnings and takeaways that you found from that research?
Absolutely. So that's another great aspect of being part of CCC is we've been able to connect with a number of researchers, and this notion of sibling caregiving is relatively new. So, people with disabilities didn't used to last as long, live as long as uh, they used to, and so they're outliving their parents,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
siblings are stepping into this role, and uh, so not much is known about this journey. So not much is known about like why siblings, what the experience is actually like for siblings. And we have over time worked with a number of different researchers, including the folks over at the Canadian Centre for Addiction and Mental Health.
Hmm.
Most recently, we've been connected with Dr. Pamela Block at the University of Western Ontario.
Hmm.
And Dr. Block is also a sibling as well. And we've been looking at what what is what is the mutual care relationship? So before I talked to you before about a shift in power
Power
dynamic, but
dynamic. Yeah.
the care is can be mutual. So what happens in that care relationship when there's a significant life transition? And by
Right.
significant life transition, of course, we mean the passing of the parents, but it can also mean a number of other things like a change in housing, a change in health status,
Hmm.
a number of other items that might qualify as significant life transition. So that's what we have been doing research on. And my phone is ringing, sorry.
No worries. What, I can't
Um,
hear it, so that's
oh, you can't hear it? Okay,
no.
good. Um, so we interviewed sibling pairs or sibling
Okay.
triads, where one sibling had a disability and one sibling uh, may not have had a disability. In some cases, both siblings did identify as having a disability. And we've come away with some what I think are very interesting findings. So I want to do them justice. So I'm just going to look at my notes.
Yeah, please do.
Um, yeah, so we heard a lot about structures, so in systemic challenges, which I think parents, of course, experience a lot of that as well. That we don't have the right formal supports or structures for sibling caregivers. That's no surprise to anybody, but I think what is happening is that siblings are filling in the gaps that really are government responsibilities. And you talked earlier about other countries, and in other countries, when a parent, like England, for example, when a parent passes away, it's not the sibling who's the first line of defense. It's actually the
It
state.
yeah, it's a good point because it's um aging, and that it's not a surprise, right? We're not making more people. I just turned 56. We're not making new 56-year-olds. We're all here, right?
Right.
So it's very easy to anticipate, as somebody ages, that eventually they're not going to be able to do what they did before, and they're going to need support. So it's such an opportunity for us to be able to plan for people. Like if your parents had been able to plan and think through this, just as a matter of course, in due course, as they're supporting Paul, how different would their view of the future been? How different would your experience have been if this was
Mhm.
a plan, if there was a plan developed versus having to do something quite quickly when
Right.
you're dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right. I mean, we were talking earlier about the book Brother, Do You Love Me?
Right.
Um, it's a book about Manny and Ruben Coe, two brothers who live in England. And as a Canadian reading that book, I was really struck at all that Manny, the typically developed brother, was offered as options.
Right.
Um, for supporting his brother. Well, that would just never happen here. And
Right.
again, I almost fell off my chair. I seem to do a lot of that, but it was just unbelievable to me that we don't have that here. And we in Canada, it's actually a kind of a social abandonment when you abandon uh, families and require them to fill in the gaps that are actually the responsibility of our state, our
Hmm.
government.
Hmm.
So we explored, we heard a lot of stories. So the work that we did with UWO with Dr. Block was ethnographic. So we
Yeah.
collected stories and we analyzed the stories, and we heard over and over again about systemic challenges. And we also um, learned that siblings they undertake extraordinary measures for the well-being of their brother or sister with disability,
Hmm.
which when you were asking me about my story, those measures that I took with my husband would qualify as extraordinary measures. The decision to cohabitate, the
Yeah.
decision to move, the decision to uh, leave or change your employment. And it sounds like these are one-offs. They are not. These are measures that siblings are undertaking on a regular basis to provide for the well-being of their brothers and sisters
Hmm.
with disabilities. And I also want to note that our brothers and sisters with disabilities are also undertaking extraordinary measures
Yeah.
by having, perhaps changes in their housing, change in their life circumstances, having to move themselves, and perhaps not having a lot of choices around those things too. So
Hmm.
there's extraordinary measures being undertaken by both sides. And we talk Dr. Block talks about this notion of world making, disability world making,
Hmm.
where when there's been a significant life transition, um, the siblings come together and they need to co-create their new reality. And often that's a very painful journey. Um, there's a lot of loss involved. Some of those losses I just talked about, like moving house, um,
Yeah.
impacting your love
Can,
relationship.
can I ask, sort of in your context, you talked about you can be a stubborn person, if I,
Mhm.
and you talked about Paul being the same at times. How did you navigate those waters? Do you have some tips that you would suggest, or what was your experience with that sort of world making in your new world, and each coming with very sort of strong thoughts, I'm assuming, around what you want that to be like.
Hmm. When I learned about world making, it was new to me. This
Right.
concept was new to me until we engaged in this research. I felt I've been caring for Paul we've been caring for each other. Paul cares
Yeah.
for me very, very much as well. Um, we, I felt this burst of pride because I feel like after many years of rough waters, we have co-created our new life together, and I think we are enjoying our lives together. Um, is there a secret recipe? Well, definitely, I don't know what that was. I think there was just that persistence. And I mean, one of the things about my brother is his stubbornness. Actually served him very well because he carved out for
Yeah.
himself, whether I liked it or not, the life that he wanted to live. And so that was really his self-determination, which my parents instilled in him, served him well. And I needed to find many ways to navigate that for myself. And there's a third person in our family, which is my husband, who is also a great, I don't know how to describe him. He's the calmest person. I joke that sometimes I need to check he's alive because he's so calm. And I think he's a great balance for us. So I don't know, I don't have anything to where I could say that this is how you achieve world making. I think for parents, what is important to be aware of is flexibility in future planning.
Right.
So it was easy for me because my parents didn't future plan. So I
Right.
had nothing to, I had to just sort of create. Well, my dad had this like duplex notion, but there was nothing really to that kept me clamped down in our world making together.
Well,
But
and yeah, so, it just sorry to interrupt, but what I take away from what you're talking about, you've been on this journey quite a while. You got into it suddenly and sort of in an unplanned way. But I guess one of the keys that I'm taking from you is you stick with it. That I'm assuming that, and you sort of alluded to this, there were some difficult times, and I'm sure there still are now, but you're committed to it, and you and Paul and your husband, you stick with it. And that's part of the secret, I guess, is just keeping moving forward.
well, I think keeping moving forward with help. So we
Yeah.
have the help of the live work
Live, work,
play.
play. Yeah.
I also say have the help of many wonderful friends. So our network, Paul attracts more people than I do. So there's his network, there's my network. We have wonderful people who, and I think when you enter into this kind of journey, you really do find out who your friends are. And so I'm not going to insinuate at all that this was done alone. Like there's a lot of moving pieces, and the many siblings that I've met through Siblings Canada as well, and learning from their stories. And I think that's one of the most important thing that Siblings Canada offers is ways to exchange stories so that we can learn from
Connecting with,
others.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
A couple of other questions just as we get towards the end of our time. It's been a journey for you and Paul, and a big change. If you rewind 25, 30 years, it's probably not where you thought your life would be at, but here you are and doing well. Can you talk about sort of a memorable moments that you cherish or something that stands out that again, a moment that you would cherish?
There's many, frankly, but I think one of the most memorable moments for me was uh, Paul turning to me and my husband saying, I couldn't have done this without you. That his recognition of our contribution to his well-being and vice versa. I mean, it wasn't echoed in that sentiment, but I have to say, Paul's enriched my life in this experience so profoundly. I'm most certainly a different person than I was 10 years ago. But in that moment, his recognition of my contribution meant the world to me. And we have morning hugs. Every morning he'll come down and give me a hug. And I feel like that just sets our day off on the right journey. But we have lots of memorable
Yeah.
moments together. Um,
That's powerful. That's powerful. What a gift.
yeah, it is a gift. He's a gift for sure.
Yeah. In terms of Siblings Canada, these
Mhm.
days with the internet and with AI, it's easy to find you guys. So if you just search Siblings Canada in Google, links to your site on the CCE site come up, and you've got a lot of resources there. There's some great videos of you talked about Manny and Ruben and a talk they did at CAMH
Mhm.
back in June. Is there anything you'd say to siblings who are maybe listening to this and unsure what to do, or parents who are
Mhm.
thinking about the future, anything you'd recommend or resources you'd point them towards?
Yes. So for siblings, often siblings don't know they need us until they know they need us. So,
Right.
that's one of the reasons why we maintain the Siblings Canada Learning Hub, which is something you can access through our website. And you mentioned those videos and podcasts, and those are there. And we're constantly adding new information for people to access. But we also run two what I think are very important programs. One is called peer mentoring,
Hmm.
where we will match siblings, one sibling who might be a little bit more experienced, or not necessarily. I mean,
Yep.
but it's a person that you can exchange ideas with. Usually, peer mentoring is a great opportunity for people who are anticipating some kind of change in the near future. We also run something called the Acceptance and Commitment Training Workshop, which
Okay.
is a 6-week workshop, 2 hours once a week. And that is a program to help us with our mental health and our emotional well-being. So we work through the many difficult feelings that come with being a sibling, whether you're a
Mhm.
carer or not. And it's acceptance and commitment training is a very popular mindfulness-based program run all over the world. And so we have one that's facilitated by siblings for siblings.
Is this virtual or
Yes.
okay, great. Okay.
It's all our programs are virtual. We used to do a lot in person, but COVID changed all that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be able to do stuff more in person, but here we are with
Yeah.
what we have
Yeah.
available virtually.
Final question for you. And we ask everybody this. What does belonging mean to you?
Mhm. Well, I think belonging is really, it's a not a nice to have. It's really like a fundamental need and that we all have. And we use belonging a lot in the disability space, but
Hmm.
it's really for all of us. It's part of our identity, who we are. And so that's when I think of it, that's what I think of, that it's something that we all need. And that's all I've got.
That's good. That's good. Um, Helen, thanks for taking the time today and being so open around what you've been through in your journey. It's I don't know if this was difficult for you being so open, but it was a gift to the rest of us to hear your story and learn about your experiences. And thank you also for founding Siblings Canada, that you took what you'd experienced and are sharing it with others to make their journey a little clearer, a little more easier, and giving people an opportunity to connect. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And my journey is certainly not the only journey, and everybody's experience is going to be different, but I hope something within my journey can help others.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Helen for sharing her story and her passion. I absolutely love hearing stories of people from our community who have made choices to live their lives in a way that benefits not only themselves, but others. I also want to thank Helen for being so open and honest and for all of the work that she does with Siblings Canada. Thanks for joining our Community Chats podcast. We release a new episode on the 15th and the 30th of each month, so don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Don't forget to join us next time as we unpack the power of community through collaborative initiatives and shared experiences. Available on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Audible, and YouTube. Follow us on social media at CL Toronto. Let's chat, share, and spread those good vibes together. We hope these discussions will inspire you and give new ideas to add your voice to our mission of making our communities and neighborhoods inclusive and welcoming.